So what's gonna happen now with, let's say, Praful Patel? Like, what will happen?
Doesn't matter. As I said, individuals don't matter. Are you telling me if Praful Patel goes, everything will be fine in Indian football?
This has happened. Praful Patel quits. Will, like, with all of that he has done, can we counter it? Like, what's gonna happen next with him? Like, he'll be just out.
First of all, you have to tell me what has he done.
He credits all of for happening the under 17 World Cup that happened in India. Then I don't want to talk
about so ideally, frankly, what has changed in Indian football after that under 17 World Cup? Why do we have to host these matches out here and embarrass ourselves? When we can't even win a simple match against a neighboring country? Forget about anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Nepal and Bangladesh.
I mean, imagine we can't beat them. Forget anybody else.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, we all.
What are we talking? Right from drivers to their cooks, to their wives, to their children, to their relatives, close and far off relatives, friends, name them, and they have been made a part of the electoral college.
Across all the federations you're talking about?
Across, there's not us, unfortunately, and I would be very happy if I'm proved wrong and somebody can correct me if I'm saying this, and I say this with utmost responsibility. Across the political spectrum, it's the same menace, and across all national sports federations, it's the same problem.
So we are in a deep beep. Hey guys, what's up? This is Pranay from Tackle From Behind, and today we've got Rahul Mehra, who's been a senior advocate and the person behind the PIL which was filed against AIFF and Praful Patel recently. It's a big honor to have you, sir. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much.
So, sir, firstly, I would just ask that, thanks a lot for doing this. As a football fan and Indian football fan, it was a big task to take down an entire, the people in power, to question them and doing a favor to all of us. So I wanted to ask you the nitty-gritties before we move on. I want to ask you nitty-gritties that how eventually this thing started. How this whole thing started, like how did you you started this way back in 2009 or 10, I suppose. So how did it started for you? Like, what's the journey?
Well, the journey actually started way back in 1999. I was just about 6 months old in my profession. I'd joined my profession in June of 1998. And I stumbled over some very revealing facts and evidence against the Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI. And I took them to court at that point in time in 99-2000 with primarily the same prayers that I had with some modification in 2009-10 against all other federations, national sports federations of India. So the journey started in 99-2000, and in a span of about 5 years, in 2004-2005, there was a landmark judgment which actually turned the entire sports law on its head. In layman terms, if I may explain, earlier only members of the National Sports Federation could sue the National Sports Federation as a body. So it's typically like if I am a shareholder of Tata or Reliance, I have a right to raise objections in their AGM. Otherwise, I don't. Similarly, if I wanted to raise any questions or any legalities against the BCCI or any other federation, I had to be a member of the BCCI. And that was the law of the land at that point in time. But thankfully, in 2004-2005, there was a landmark judgment in Delhi High Court, which said that based on my arguments in the court and my pleadings, that, I'm a taxpayer I'm a taxpayer. I pay taxes in this country. Because of the taxpayers' money from the public exchequer, BCCI gets directly or indirectly funds to host their matches on stadia, which is given to them almost at throwaway prices or free of cost. And therefore, directly or indirectly, I'm the one who's funding BCCI as a national sports federation, being a taxpayer. there was this landmark judgment of the High Court, which was upheld by the Supreme Court, which really turned everything on its head and said, even if I'm an ordinary citizen of this country, every ordinary citizen of this country has a right to question these national sports federations, including BCCI, since they perform key functions of selecting the team for the country and various other functions, and they're financed by the public money. So that opened the floodgates of litigation against the national sports federations. So my first stint against, you said that I've done a big favor to the people and to, I don't think I've done any favor to anybody. It's just a call of duty as a citizen. Obviously being a lawyer helped. And I never thought that I would actually, over the years, be known for, taking on all the national sports federations, including the big wigs like BCCI and the All India Football Federation. But then that's the way it panned out. There is something, providence, God has a larger role in it. You just become a medium. And so you don't need to thank me at all. We all need to do whatever little we can in our own spheres and to make our country a better country.
But I mean,
to make our sports better sports.
Voice. I'm just saying it. I meant to say just being our voice, because, Twitter pe likhna and, wo cheez likhna versus actually doing something about is, it's that's where the line draws. I can go out and rant, thoda bahut Twitter pe jaake likh diya, मैंने AIFF को लिख दिया, Praful Patel को tweet कर दिया. That doesn't really help,
So the way I look at it is, frankly, we all in India, majority of us are drawing room talkers. We sit in our drawing rooms and we give gyan to many people. We in fact tell Mr. Modi how to run the government. Earlier we used to tell Dr. Manmohan Singh how to run the government. Yeah. All I want to say is each one of us has a specific niche area of our expertise. And I happen to dwell into sports, but all of us, if we just look into and contribute our 1 or 2%, I'm not even saying give your 100% of your time and resources to the thing which really is your calling, something which is your passion. Sports is my passion, and my life goal has been for last 20 years now. I've been fighting almost 22 years now against the national sports federations, and So if we all contribute a little bit in our own fields, just imagine the kind of country that already a great country like India would be. Absolutely. So all I'm saying is that's what the journey was, and that's how it started. And then I just wanted to replicate what successes I got during the BCCI time. I don't take public interest litigations lightly. In fact, if I'm filing something in my own name, and I'm taking it to the court, it's my responsibility to do all that I can before I get to the court. And which is what has helped me over the years, because the courts then start taking you very seriously. And also what it does is you have all the evidence against these bodies. And unfortunately for them, they can't negate any of this. And therefore they struggle in every hearing in the case. Over the years, traditionally, I've seen, they have absolutely no arguments. And the arguments that they have are lame arguments just to save their skin. Of course. And therefore, the courts can see through it so easily that, these are people who are actually creating their own fiefdoms. And they want to actually, it's you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It's a kind of an electorate, which is a very cozy club of sorts. And therefore, courts can just see through all of this and give their verdicts.
So tell us your first stint against AIFF. This was the whole, we got to know the journey. Now tell us the first stint, Rahul Mehra versus AIFF, like you mentioned. So what? Well,
it was. I didn't take AIFF alone to court. So it was Rahul Mehra versus. It was Rahul Mehra versus Union of India and almost all other national sports federations. Typically, I chose about 13 to 15 of them initially, and then when the judgment came, it came across the board. So AIFF was very much a party to that particular litigation, which started in 2009, 2010, and which is still carrying on. And what has happened yesterday is a part of that 12-year journey. Unfortunately, or fortunately for you guys, you only see what happened yesterday. But it's been a long and arduous journey of 12 years, persistent journey against all odds. There have been ups and downs. There have been good days and bad days. There have been excitement, and there's been a lot of lows.
Yeah.
So, but in 2009-10, I filed this a petition saying that there is something called the National Sports Guidelines, and sports. So all these orders and circulars of the Sports Ministry, Government of India, they reduced it in the form of certain guidelines. And those guidelines eventually, culminated into a document called the National Sports Development Code of India, in short, the Sports Code. That came in on 31st of January 2011, after a year and a half after I filed my petition. And it was an outcome of my petition itself, because the government was forced to come up with some kind of a policy for sports, which was non-existent earlier. So be it Congress, be it BJP, be it Rashtriya Janata Dal, be it the National Conference, across the board, across political party lines, it's the same problem and it's the same menace, which is that politicians or their proxies have come and occupied these posts. And once they come in, they refuse to leave. So I'd prepared a chart where I'd shown that how uninterrupted tenures of people are continuing for 15 years, for 20 years, in one case, more than 30 years. And it's impossible to dislodge these people, and they've created their own fiefdoms. These are like their private empires. They've got their own people, right from drivers to their cooks, to their wives, to their children, to their relatives, close and far off relatives, friends, name them, and they have been made a part of the electoral college.
Across all the federations you're talking about?
Across, there's not a, unfortunately, and I would be very happy if I'm proved wrong and somebody can correct me if I'm saying this, and I say this with utmost responsibility. Across the political spectrum, it's the same menace, and across all national sports federations, it's the same problem.
So we are in a deep beep.
Well, which is why this fight over 12 years or 22 years, whichever way you see, and it's been a consistent, persistent fight. I've not let it off even for a single day.
So tell us, sir. Okay, so now we're going to talk about just on the AIFF verdict that just recently came out. I know it's been a 12, like you mentioned, it's been a 12 long years of wait. But for someone who doesn't, let's say someone like me and a lot of people, who tweet you, who want to know about, or just reading of newspapers, just the headlines, not the entire. I would count myself to that as well. But someone like that, how would you explain the petition that you filed versus what verdict came out? So can you just brief us on that? So what was eventually what was the issue that you filed for, and what was the verdict?
So my petition, if you see, has always been based on and has always wanted a systemic change. So I'm against a system, and the system is that there is nepotism in sports bodies. Father, son, son's daughter, relatives, they are the ones who occupy the posts and positions of power. And I'm against that. And I want democracies to be installed, democratic elections to happen, not only farce elections, which are on the face of it democratic, but at the back of it are completely manipulated. So my fight all throughout has been against system. Unfortunately, there are people who come in the way, and those people get dislodged. I want democratic elections to happen. I want fresh blood to be infused. I don't want the same sense of frustrations amongst the entire lot of people who want to contribute to sports. There are good people, good administrators in sports who can never ever come to power because they don't play those dirty tricks, and they don't play those. They don't indulge in dirty politics. And why I'm against politicians being there in sports is for simply one reason. They bring all the bad practices of politics either nationally or at the state level into these sports bodies, which intoxicates people and which after a while spoils your health and the health of Indian sports and sports persons. And my fight, in a generic term, if I may say, is how to ensure that good people, good intended people, well-intended people with clean hearts can have a fair shot at the system and can be democratically elected to contribute towards making Indian sports reach the pinnacle of world sports. And this argument that players don't make good administrators is actually a non-starter. How many times over the last 75 years in post-independence of India have you given a fair shot to a player to administer?
Correct.
Others have administered the sport for 75 years and they have miserably failed. They've got our sports into the situation that we are today in and our administration where it exists. So give them a fair shot. Allow them to fail. Some will pass with flying colors, some will fail. But that's what happens with politicians as well. So why keep players away?
So you're basically, if I may, just correct me if I'm wrong. So you want politicians out definitely, and you want players to actually come and take the spots in federations.
Yes, it might not be that simple, but at least they will have the heart at the right place. At least they will think for the players. At least they know the challenges, the trials and tribulations of how they have come up over a particular period of time, how careers are made and destroyed, what needs to be done in the interest of sports and sportspersons at the larger scale. None of these administrators are even concerned about any of this. All they want to do is they need a political platform. They want to be seen with the legends and they want to create their own market, their own fiefdoms. That's what they're interested in. Their end game is something entirely different, not for sports, not for sportspersons.
So, sir, tell us about the recent verdict. Like what as a layman, what was the verdict that is filed? And I think AIFF hasn't haven't issued a formal statement. I would say I just read few tweets where they're saying that they accept the Supreme Court's order and they will be in a process to execute it. But can you just tell us about the verdict?
So two things. They're not doing Supreme Court or this country or anybody a favor by accepting this verdict. Do they have a choice?
No, they don't.
So what do they mean that we accept this verdict? If you don't accept this verdict, what are you going to do? And what can you do? I mean, all you can do is come back to the court of law and hopefully argue before the same bench and modify or get the order modified, right? That's what they're trying to do. So first of all, they or anybody else, when Supreme Court orders, they are not doing anybody a favor. That's the law of the land. That's the mandate, and they jolly well follow that line of or the directions which have been passed. Number one. Number two, they have tried to divert this for way too long. This process, as I told you, started in 2009-10 with this petition. In 2012, in December of 2012, when the elections were due in AIFF, I had filed my first application in this petition, wherein I had asked for stay of the election of AIFF because they were not following the National Sports Code and the guidelines and the model election guidelines in the code. And this is the first round. In the first round, unfortunately, the Congress government at that point in time, and which is why I say it could be Congress, it could be BJP at the center, really doesn't matter. It's the same story in the sports ministry. They behave like an ostrich. They pick up people and they see who the personality is at the top of the ladder, which is the body. Is this man our man, or is this man a man from the opposite camp? If he's our man, we'll protect him. If he's a man from the opposite camp, we will go after him. So the rule book doesn't matter. The law doesn't matter. The law is applied differently to different bodies and at times to the same body if different people are there at different points in time differently. In 2012, for the first round, when I challenged this in the court of law, that the election should be stayed, at that point in time, the court passed an order where it said that the elections can go on provided the AIFF holds elections A, as per its constitution, and B, as per the mandates of the sports code. Right? They went ahead, held the election. The election results were declared, and since the elections were subject to the outcome of my application subsequently, I filed a substantive application highlighting which are the issues and how is it that AIFF has violated the code, the sports code. Subsequently, the matter was sent to the ministry by the court to look into these objections and pass a order. Ministry took the side, and as I said, it doesn't matter Congress or BJP. At that time, ministry took the side of AIFF, obviously Praful Patel being their key partner and top politician. and they decided in favor of the AIFF. Nevertheless, and this took about 2-3 years, and by the time this particular order came in another year's time, the next elections were due. So then came 2016, the second round. When the second round came in, I brought in absolutely the same arguments with a few others because of the kind of violations they were indulging in. As regards, I'll give you a flavor. The sports code says you have to have only one proposer and seconder for nominations to be filled in. In the AIFF constitution, they have that you have to have a minimum of 5 proposers and 5 seconders. That means they are restricting the people who can contest the election. So it's not open for everybody to contest.
It's not a fair.
They want lesser. It's not a fair and democratic process. You're restricting the entire election.
Okay.
Number 2, minimum 25% eminent sports persons have to be there with voting rights. They had none. And the ones they had, which they wanted to qualify as as players, football players, I mean, it's a laughable, you read the names and that's the end of the story. I don't need to go any further. And those are the people they call as eminent players. 3, something as simple as that electoral college and the returning officers details have to be shared at least 30 days prior. They did not do that. They changed the electoral college at the last 11th hour. So all of these things put together, the court said, prima facie, we see what Mr. Mehra is saying, and we believe that what he's saying is right, and therefore we stay the election. So they stayed the elections the second time in 2016. Now, 5 days later, they modified that order saying that, okay, let's do one thing. Let's go ahead with the elections, but we will monitor it and we will keep it subject to the final outcome of Mr. Mehra's application. In the next 6 to 8 months, we argued the entire matter, and the High Court in 2017 on 31st of October passed a fantastic order where they said that these are all the violations of the code, these are the violations otherwise of the constitution provisions, and therefore we are setting aside the election in which Mr. Praful Patel was elected. So they threw Mr. Praful Patel out of office in 2017 on 31st of October. And they gave a mechanism. They appointed Dr. S.Y. Qureshi as the administrator. They said he will be the one who will be running the affairs. No decision will be taken, which is a major financial decision of AIFF. And all this exercise has to be completed of holding fresh elections, electoral college, amending the constitution, blah, 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 within the next 6 months. So they gave a complete roadmap, and that's where it came to. Mr. Praful Patel then challenged it in the Supreme Court and didn't argue anything on the merits as to how what has been found and held to be so by the High Court. They had absolutely no argument on any of those issues of violations of the principles of the sports code and the constitution of AIFF. All they said was that the World Cup, Women World Cup, God knows what happens to that World Cup. God knows who participates. India is nowhere in the scene. They said Women's World Cup is coming and India will not be able to participate. And unfortunately, they were able to convince the court at that point in time. But that's the nature of how our litigations go. And at that point in time, that portion of the order where the High Court had stayed the elections, had set aside the elections, was stayed by the Supreme Court. Mr. Praful Patel was allowed to continue in office, and then the matter was supposed to come up for subsequent hearings. But in the meantime, instead of only Dr. Qureshi, the Supreme Court modified that order and said, with Dr. S.Y. Qureshi, there will be Mr. Bhaskar Ganguly, the former captain of Indian football team, who would also be a part of the Committee of Administrators, stroke Ombudsman, both of them were given the mandate that they will come up with a proposed constitution looking into the sports code and good practices and principles to be followed. And they will propose that to the court, and then the court will look into this aspect. So this happened when? This happened in November of 2017.
Okay.
Then for 2 years, nothing happened. Then for the next 2 years, COVID came in, 2.5 years. So last 5 years, nothing happened in the court of law. And then the Praful Patel's tenure, which prima facie was initially set aside by High Court. Subsequently, the ombudsman and were placed in the body. That also came to an end in 2020 because the tenure of an office bearer in any national sports federation is a maximum of 4 years.
Yeah,
that's the election. So the one term is 4 years. Yeah. So that particular term started in December 2016 and ended in December 2020. And for the last almost close to 1.5 years, this body illegally is continuing, taking the advantage of the pendency in the litigation in the Supreme Court. And thankfully, now the matter again was mentioned sometime last week. On the mentioning, the Supreme Court thought it appropriate to take it up. The matter was taken up. An application was filed by one of the clubs. And based on that mentioning, the Honorable Supreme Court thought it appropriate that the matter should be now taken up on board after so many years. And so it came up on board and it was heard on 18th of May. And that's when this order came in based on my suggestions before the court. Because I had made two or three suggestions before the court. Number one, that now that the proposed constitution has already been filed by the two committee of administrators, stroke ombudsman, Dr. Qureshi and Mr. Bhaskar Ganguly, their constitution was in a sealed cover, and therefore the constitution should be taken on record of the court, and it should be circulated amongst all the concerned parties who are a part of the case, so that objections stroke suggestions, if any, could come up before the court, and then the court could finally adjudicate this entire process. This was primarily a suggestion made because the AIFF Council tried to scuttle this entire process and did not want an adjudication to be done by the Supreme Court, and in fact had suggested to the bench that it should not be the Supreme Court who should look into anything. This entire constitution should be allowed to be placed before their General Assembly, and they should be permitted to either accept the entire constitution, reject the entire constitution, modify it, alter it in whichever way, accept in part or full or otherwise, and to which I had taken a strong objection and said they can't be judge in their own cause. They are the ones who brought the Indian football to this state. Yeah. They are the ones who are in the dock, and therefore they surely can't be permitted.
Go on.
And therefore, they surely can't be permitted to be the ones who should place this entire document before their own General Assembly. And in all likelihood, they are never going to accept anything of what has been suggested, probably. So therefore, like in the BCCI matter, what had fallen from the bench, the same practice should be followed probably for football as well, which is that all these objections stroke suggestions should come up through the committee of administrators before the court, and the court should finally adjudicate on what should be the constitution and what should the guidelines be, what should be the provisions which should be followed by football association. And I'm very happy to see that the honorable bench found some weight in my argument and agreed to not only this suggestion of mine, but also another suggestion where I'd said that we already have two committee of administrators, so stroke ombudsman. Please appoint a retired Supreme Court judge who can then be also there as a part of this committee of administrators. Then there could be three of them together, and the entire affairs of the state of affairs, day-to-day affairs of the AIFF should be in the hands of this committee of administrators. And a suggestion came from the AIFF that probably this particular body of Mr. Patel should be there. Otherwise, FIFA would de-recognize it. Yeah. And the bench very quickly responded, said that we know how to deal with FIFA. Don't worry about that.
Right. So, sir, I want to ask you this in this same counter statement. The AIFF said that this openly has the possibility by a ban of FIFA, of course, if the action of COA pursuant to Supreme Court order is constructed as a third-party interference in running the body by an international body. This could mean the under-17 Women's World Cup, which has happened to, in October, I think October and November. And this can be taken away from India. And also there is some Asian qualifiers that are scheduled to happen in Kolkata, I guess. So these are few things that happened. Yeah.
So my response to this was twofold in the court. Number one, that this is the last recourse of these incompetent set of sports administrators, because when they lose every other argument and they have nothing else to stand on, they take out the national card and they start crying in the court of law, which is what exactly they did in 2016-17 to stall and to get this order stayed. And unfortunately, at that point in time, the honorable court looked into it from the perspective that Indian team will not be able to participate. I said, what is this Indian team? Put it in perspective. We are not even in the top 100 of world football. So therefore, let Indian football. Therefore, let Indian football suffer for a few more days, and let's clean our own house. And let's then jump back into the top 10 of the world. That's the way we need to go. And so therefore, this is lame arguments. Last card is going to be derecognition card. Last card is going to be the national card. Last card is going to be the players card, that their careers are at stake and they will suffer. None of this matters to any of these sports administrators. If this mattered to these people, if players' careers matter to these people, they would not be toying with the careers of Indian players, sports persons. And just because
I want to put an argument here, FIFA banned Kenya and Zimbabwe for the same reasons. For the
doesn't matter. The worst that is going to happen is FIFA will ban India. So be it. The IOC banned IOA. Indian Olympics entire contingent was at stake. You have to understand who has brought Indian football to the situation where we find Indian football and players to be in. It is the doing of the sports administrators. If they were so concerned about Indian football and Indian football players, they should have sought their mess long time back. Obviously, they are incapable of sorting it, and therefore courts must not buy into these lame arguments. They should absolutely dismiss this argument, because the same argument was taken in a BCCI matter, that IOC will derecognize BCCI. Sorry, the ICC, International Cricket Council, ICC will ban or derecognize the BCCI. And this is, let me tell you, with a lot of responsibility, I say this. It is our own sports administrators who were holding the positions at the helm of these bodies, who go and cry there before FIFA and before ICC and before IOC. Get a letter threatening the country that you will be derecognized, and use it as a tool and as a ploy before a court of law. So it is important for the courts to now look into and see through this entire game of these corrupt and incompetent and inefficient sport administrators, and not allow this kind of an argument to hold to be placed even before the court of law.
Okay. So now very, very interesting. So okay, this was a complete eye opener for me. Now we'll come to the very last part of it. So we have got the verdict, and although I don't know when or how AIFF will intervene, but I just wanted to know your thoughts. What will be so I need to know two things. What is the ideal thing that you believe which you want eventually? And since you have already a 20-25 years of seeing all of this mess, what is gonna eventually happen? So it's a very it's gonna be a very I'm sorry to put you out in this way, but what is the ideal way versus how you think it's gonna be played out? Since you have already so much experience.
I wish my prophecy would come true, but I've had 22 years of experience with these sports bodies. Unfortunately for them and fortunately for us, I'm able to see through the next 7 to 10 steps they are going to take. And I always say it in the court of law almost a year or 2 years before they actually think of doing it. So I tell them that this is what is going to happen. This is how they're going to do. Exactly that happens subsequently in the court of law. But be that as it may, it's a serious question, and let me address it seriously. See, what is the court order? The court order is there are 3 things which are supposed to happen by July 30th. The first and the foremost, the entire constitution has to be placed before the proposed constitution by the two COA members has to be placed before the court of law, which has been done. I assume it has been done because that's the order of the court to the COA. The constitution then has to be shared with each one of us. I so far I haven't received the constitution, but I'm assuming within the next few days, once we write to the COA will share the constitution with all of us. Then we have been directed, all the parties have been directed that by June 30th, you have to give your objections or suggestions, if any, to the three court committee of administrators. Between June 30th and July 15th, the committee of administrators will then collate this entire document in a format which the court has already indicated how they want that particular document, which will primarily show the various suggestions made by different parties and what is it that is the stand of the committee of administrators qua each provision, right, which is there in the proposed constitution. And on July 30th, the court has now fixed this for further hearing. So on that day, the court will look into these provisions, and probably arguments are going to be heard on behalf of all the parties to the litigation. So June 30th, suggestions to be given to COA. July 15th, COA to collate the document and place it before the court of law for assisting it in the process, and next date of hearing being July 30th. Now, there are 2 or 3 things that can happen. The first and the foremost, the proposed constitution is accepted in toto, absolutely without any full stop or comma removed. And then that becomes the constitution of AIFF, and they are asked to adopt it. Or actually, they will not be asked to adopt. It will be an order of the court, which is what has been indicated. Again, I had requested the court that they should follow the BCCI route rather than anything else. The court was kind enough to indicate that we will make it a part of the court order rather than asking you to take it back to your General Assembly and get it passed. So that's alternative option 1, that the proposed constitution is accepted the way it is. I don't see that happening. I think, first of all, we don't know what the proposed constitution is, number 1, because it was placed in a sealed cover. So all of us are oblivious to what the provisions of the constitution are. But it can't be. It never is that a sports federation or all the parties would actually think alike and they would agree. In a utopian concept, that's correct. It happens. But practically, I don't see that happening at all. So there will be some minor, little bit of tweaking or little bit of minor,
if paid of 4 or 5 crores of legal fees, of course they're going to use some of it to tweak.
But to be fair to the other side, Pranay, that's their right. That's a legal right? So if you have money and if you can spend those resources on fielding on getting the best top legal minds, so be it. But even the best of the best lawyers can't change facts and can't really stop an idea whose time has come. I think this is an idea whose time has come, and it's going to be very difficult for them to stop this from going forward. But that's my optimism as a litigant, and as a petitioner in person, I feel that had I not had this optimism, I wouldn't have been here for the last 22 years consistently. I'm a fool in my own arena. I believe that if you persist and if you honestly pursue a particular cause, sooner than later, it might take 40 years, it might take 20 years, it might take 10 years, but sooner or later things will happen. And gradually over a period of time, if we see where Indian sports was in 1999 when I started, and where Indian cricket is and where the other sports today are, there is some difference or some change. Now, obviously, I won't like to take all the credit for it. I don't have a single person out here in the governments or in the federations who likes me, because I show them the mirror, and unfortunately, all they see is a ghost in that mirror, which is their own reflection. But my job is to say the truth to the powers that be, and that's what I do very honestly. Now, second option could be, coming back to your question, that there will be probably a majority of the proposed constitution. Hopefully, that is a document which is a progressive document, and which is a document which has been very seriously looked into and thought out, and then placed before the court of law. And I have no reason to believe otherwise. I would believe that what had happened in the BCCI matter by the Lodha committee, almost all of what Lodha's committee suggestions were accepted by the court. So I am assuming that almost all of what this constitution is proposing will be accepted by the court. Obviously, after a due process, after hearing all the parties and looking into all objections and suggestions. So that's option 2. And then it becomes through an order of the court. The AIFF has to follow it. Fresh elections will immediately then commence. A fresh electoral college based on the provisions which have then been finalized in this final constitution, which has the blessings of the Supreme Court, will then be implemented, and the elections will then happen, and a duly democratically elected body will come into place. And then that's where this court will then stop monitoring this particular issue. That, I think, is the most likely outcome. This is what I would want to happen
on a very ideal day.
I think it's not ideal. I think it's a very practical and it's a very sensible way of going ahead. And we have precedent to that effect because of the BCCI judgment. We already have that in place, and all that needs to be done is replicate that with a few minor tweaking here and there. And fortunately for us, the Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, the Honorable Judge, one of the justices on this bench, who's heading this particular bench, has been the one who has authored and has been a part of that entire journey in BCCI. So that also in its will have its own way. And Justice Narasimha, if I if I remember it correctly, probably also had a very significant role in the latter part of the BCCI pronouncements. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a critical role which was played probably as an amicus in the matter or something. I'll have to check it, but subject to correction, I think that's what it was. And then, so here's thankfully a bench which actually understands and has already gone through the various mechanisms and the provisions of almost similar in nature in the BCCI matter.
Got it.
So that's where I get my pragmatism and optimism from. When you said that this is ideal, I think maybe it's an ideal situation, but it's a very practical one, very, very doable and achievable one because of all of this. And also because of the facts are so telling. Who will say that no, there should not be a limited tenure? Who will say that no, there should not be fresh blood which should come into the body? Who will say that at least minimum 25% players? We are not asking for 100% player reservation. Actually, there should be a reservation for non-players. It should be other way. That 25% could be non-players from outside, lawyers, doctors, businessmen, entrepreneurs. But who would deny a minimum of 25% to players, right? So, which is why this is where I get my optimism and pragmatism from. And the third option could be, which I don't see happening at all, that the proposed constitution is completely done away with, or a major part of that proposed constitution is dismissed by the court. And what AIFF wants is what eventually happens. Maybe because I'm the petitioner in person, I don't want to see that ever happening. And which is why I have probably a biased view on the third option. But I personally, even if I detach myself from this litigation completely, purely as a student of law, person who's been pursuing a legal career in the court of law, if I see it only from that prism, I don't see that happening at all, because of the precedents which have been there over the last 20 years now. The sports law as it was in 99 and what it is today, there's a absolute 180 degrees change in the entire perception of how sports needs to be run. And there are judicial pronouncements to that effect. So hopefully and thankfully, that would actually also help a lot.
So what's going to happen with what's going to happen now with let's say Praful Patel? Like, what will happen?
Doesn't matter. As I said, individuals don't matter. Are you telling me if Praful Patel goes, everything will be fine in Indian football?
No,
there are tens of others Praful Patel kinds of people in AIFF. If they come to power, probably things.
So my question is like, okay, so this has happened. Praful Patel quits. Will, like, with all of that he has done, can we counter it? Like, what's going to happen next with him? Like, he'll be just out.
First of all, you have to tell me, what has he done?
Yeah, I mean,
I can tell you what all he could do, which in 12 years or 14 years he couldn't. But what all he has done, I don't know. Maybe he can give us blow his own trumpet. When you are holding an office, it is for others to appreciate what you've done. It is not for you to tom and blow your own trumpet as to I've done this and I've done that. Yeah. That is only you're abusing your position of power by doing that, because others have no say in the matter and others won't be able to stand up to you, look into your eye and show you the mirror because of the the way the things are in India. People, even if they have something to say, they either feel intimidated, scared of the positions that you hold, or they are in some way or the other compromised, or they feel that maybe why should I expose myself that I'm in the opposite camp? So people keep quiet. So therefore, I don't. You need to give me at least 5 things that he's done. Forget 5. One big thing that he has done.
He credits for all of he credits all of for happening the under 17 World Cup that happened in India. Then I don't want to talk about
so ideally, frankly, what has changed in Indian football after that under 17 World Cup? Please tell me. Why do we have to host these matches out here and embarrass ourselves? Yeah. We can't even win a simple match against a neighboring country. Forget about anybody else.
Yeah, I mean Nepal and Bangladesh.
I mean, imagine we can't beat them. Forget anybody else.
Yeah, that's I mean, we all.
What are we talking? State, yeah. And in the 60s, imagine where Indian football was.
Yeah.
So what have these guys done? I mean, what are they talking about? They're living in their own ivory towers. It's a fool's paradise. So let's not get there. What they have done, what they've not done, and it's not Praful Patel, as I say. Each one of them. Nobody can ever say that it's because of me and my policies, my tenure of 12 years, because of which I have given you this. I have brought Indian hockey or Indian football or Indian cricket or Indian. It happens by chance. Unfortunately, in this country, everything happens by chance. Okay. It's despite the system, as the legend of Indian sports, the person who is the greatest sports person in this modern era, Abhinav Bindra, he puts it in his book very, very succinctly. He puts it. He says, I am a product despite the system, not because of it.
Yeah.
And that's what Indian sports is. We need to change that. We need to have Abhinav Bindras and Tendulkars because of the system, not despite the system.
I mean, even in AIFF now we've got Sunil Chhetri, despite the system. We have got some young Abdul Samad because of the system. We've got recently there has been some development of the players.
But should I tell you something? Yeah. I'll tell you something. If the systems remain the way they are and the constitution provisions remain the way they are, these players, no matter how big legends, and I'm not talking about Sunil or anybody else, but I'm saying irrespective of these names, forget these names. The biggest legend of the sport will be a puppet in the hands of these administrators if they will not be given a free hand, if they don't come duly elected from their own players' associations, if those player associations are not autonomous, if those player associations don't have financial independence, if they don't have democratic independence, if they are not democratically elected, nothing. All these players are going to be puppets in the hands of these sharks kind of administrators.
And it's going to be the same story again. It's going to be the same.
Yes, absolutely. Look at cricket right now. What is going on? Number 2 is calling the shots.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Politically, you have to cut the umbilical cord of politics in sports. You have to just cut it now. And you have to say we have to divorce as much as possible. The dirty politics should not enter the pious arena of sports. If we are able to achieve even that much, I think we are going to be in good hands in the next 50 years. And you will see visible changes in the next 10, 15 years. I want to see an Indian sports and Indian sports. Where do I want to see Indian sports? In next 15 to 20 years, I want to see India in the top 3 nations of the medal tally of Olympic Games.
Olympics, yeah.
Can we do it in 20 years? We can.
Maybe, yeah.
How? We all need to put our heads together. We all need to think only and only from the perspective of player and the facilities that they require, and untangle the issues that we have created for them. Let the players be, bring transparency in your functioning. Sunlight is the biggest disinfectant. Open your doors to the public, who is your stakeholder. Adopt best principles of international practices which are being followed across the globe. Open it up to people who really believe in sports. Have people-to-people partnership and bring in entrepreneurs. Completely. Entrepreneurs will support every sport. We have phenomenal number of entrepreneurs in this country who are willing to pump in crores and crores into the game, but they feel shy of doing it because they feel that their hard-earned money is going to be thrown down the drain because of the kind of administration of sports that is prevailing in this country.
And of course, the ideas because of the red tapeism and all of that. I mean, the idea as well.
So we need to bring that confidence level back into the stakeholders. We need to ensure that the money is well spent, that every single penny is accounted for. Why should an ordinary citizen ask for something under RTI? Why should anybody? RTI should become meaningless in sports bodies. Have self-disclosures. Have self-disclosures.
Yeah.
Put every single aspect of because you say I'm here only for the love of the sport. You say I'm holding an honorary post. You say I'm not even taking a penny out of this. If you are doing what you are saying, and if you're walking that talk, what are you hiding from people of India? And why are you hiding it? And why, despite RTIs after RTIs, you even CIC, when they tell you to disclose, you file a petition in the High Court and seek a stay order of that disclosure? What are you hiding? What are the ghosts in your closet? In the name of honorary posts, what have you siphoned off? The problem lies here.
Okay, so my last question to you, sir. It's been a very long discussion, but my last question would be, as a football fan, okay, like me and like a lot of people, young people who are started watching football, and they love the game to the core, and we compare ourselves to European football, and then we see Indian football. There is literally no match. Like I don't want to say it, but it's just not of the standard. And even if I want to support India during matches, I don't want to see them getting beaten or draw. So the quality also has not risen up in the past, let's say, decade or so. So as a football fan, someone who's watching this right now, what can we do? Like, is there anything that we can do to support it, and not just being a keyboard warrior, but is there anything that we should stand up and speak to make these changes possible?
Obviously, every citizen can do it. And look at what happened during Nirbhaya's time, right? It was the people's voice which made the most powerful government of the day at that point in time, the UPA, under the Congress leadership, right? They were brought on their knees, and the entire law was amended.
Yeah.
People's voice and people power. We underestimate our power, actually. If people mean business, if all of us come together, the problem is we don't come together. Divide and rule is something which British people practiced, and the entire colonial regime, were able to rule over us for more than 100 years, for the reason that we were fragmented into our caste, creed, religion, and God knows what all.
Yeah.
We can just be Indians and just be, sports citizens. And if we can not take hypocrisy from these administrators anymore, if we force them to become accountable and transparent in their functioning and dealing, they will not be able to. And if we force politicians out of these sporting bodies, I'm sure Indian sports and Indian sports persons will prosper. But the point is, eventually, when there is an overwhelming support of people to a particular cause, and in this case, it could be one litigation or the other, because people on their own, after all, beyond a point, they would feel, what is it that I can do, even if I want to do something? Yeah. So you can actually support through various mediums that we don't want politicians in sports. You can support that we want players, who should govern themselves. You can support that, we want absolute transparency in the functioning of sporting bodies. You can say that, the government should stop funding these bodies, and they should de-recognize these bodies if they don't adhere to the basic principles and norms. If we stop taking nonsense and complete crap from these sporting bodies, and if we are able to come and unite ourselves and bring all of us under a single platform or a cause, and support that particular cause, I think all of us will do. First, we will feel very satisfied about ourselves. Rather than being drawing room talkers, we would be a little bit of a doer. And eventually, I have no doubt in my mind that it will play its own very critical role in finally, whatever is the outcome of eventually that particular cause which has been initiated by people at large. So I think people's power is highly underrated, and one politician rules over a particular sport for decades simply because people have kept quiet. Yeah. People have compromised. People have scuttled their voice under pressure. All you need is one individual to stand up, one, in every field, in every sphere, and you will be surprised how thousands and millions of people just follow that one person. Wow. So that's what the power of one is.
Wow. Thanks a lot. So thanks a lot, Rahul sir. I think that really was an eye opener, and I'm just so glad that at least someone is out there who's being, I would say, as a voice right now for millions of fans in India who are watching football, and they see their team. Thank you for being that voice, not just being a keyboard warrior and just typing it out. I mean, that's also if you're doing it, then that's also
that has its own space and role.
But doing it is something that I really highly.
But let me just tell you, and through you, your audience, that this is not the only litigation, and this football is not the only one which is going to get impacted in the next few months. There is a judgment which is reserved in the division bench of Delhi High Court, which is going to hopefully completely reform the way the Indian Olympic Association has been, administering this all other sports disciplines. And all I can say is courts will play a very important role in the next few years in cleaning up Indian sports. Unfortunately, courts will have to do that. Yeah. Sports is supposed to be played in a certain court. Surely not in the court of law, but due to the vested interest which has crept in, and such deep-rooted vested interest that and which is so conflicted at times that unless and until courts of law intervene, things won't really go ahead and progress from here on. And so I see that in the next few years, the cleansing process is going to be there. And then nobody will be able to stop Indian sports. And very soon, hopefully in our lifetime, we'll see that India probably tops that medal tally in Olympics.
And a dream that we all are having, that to India, playing the World Cup.
But all this will not happen in one Olympic Games or over a period of 4 to 10 years. Yeah. It will take 15 to 20 years minimum. But we need to start that journey now.
Perfect.
Our aim should not be hosting Olympic Games. Our aim should be, when we host the Olympic Games, we should be at the top of the medal tally. That should be our aim.
Perfect. All right, guys. So thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you for coming on the show, firstly, and being so prompt. Really appreciate you that. And we'll just wait out now. I think the verdict is already out there. Now we just need to witness, the change happening. So thanks to you for coming on the show. And
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
all right.